Hi again! Welcome to Annie's Crochet Stripe Afghan Club video tutorial for kit number 10. I'm Lena Skvagersson and I'm thrilled to be your guide as we make the very last 3 stripes of this beautiful stitch sampler. We have made endless fun and interesting stripes by now, but there's room for 3 more, right? I think I may have saved the best stripes for last. In stripe 28, we're going to spread some love, making hearts across our Afghan, and then we will create interesting chunky ridges. Finally, we have a new spike stitch to learn. Don't worry, it's not hard. I'll guide you throughout the entire 3 stripes. Before we begin crocheting, let's review the materials included in the kit and items that you will need to have on hand. In this shipment, you have received the 3 skeins of yarn for the stripes 28 through 30. You got the colors Spa, Cream, and Cappuccino, and you will also need remnants of the Seafoam color that you have from before. We have a new instruction leaflet, and you will be using your eye hook, your stitch markers, and the yarn needle that you have received free in your very first shipment. You will also need your scissors and the tape measure. Are you ready to begin stripe 28? I love revisiting the basics and creating new ideas. Stripe 28 is lacy and pretty. We will be using the basic crochet stitches again, but also find out how to create a heart shape by adding treble clusters on row 3. Only 3 stripes to go, so let's get this one going. Our next stripe is 5 rows that create these adorable hearts across. It starts out with 2 rows with single crochets, and then we have 3 rows that creates the heart-shaped texture. Let's get started. I'm ready to start working row 1. I'm on the right side of work and I will be working with Spa. I am starting by joining here at the top of those chain 2 that we did at the beginning of previous row. So put your hook through the second chain and then pull the yarn through, and you will chain 1 and then you will put a single into the very same stitch. So it's getting a little tight there, but get your yarn through, yarn over, and go through both your loops. Now we will work a single crochet in each stitch across. So in each and every one, you're going to place a single. And for this one, I'm choosing to work around the tail, so I will not have to weave it in later. So keep working your single crochets across like this. Then at the end of the row, turn, chain 1, and work a single crochet starting in the first stitch and in each stitch across. And I'll meet you again there at the end of row 2. So we're ready to work row 3, and now is where the heart's going to start happening. We will start with the chain 3 in our first stitch. Then the pattern tells us to skip the next 3 single crochets. So hold on to that next single crochet, because here is where the pattern starts the next repetition, telling us to work everything between the brackets. So that is first a 2 treble cluster. So to work a treble cluster, you wrap the yarn twice around the hook, then go into that stitch that we marked, bring up a loop, yarn over, go through your first 2 loops, yarn over, go through your second 2 loops, and here you will wait with your last pull through. You double yarn over again around the hook, and you go into the very same stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over and go through the first 2, yarn over through the second 2, and now with 3 loops on your hook, you yarn over and go through all 3 loops. So there you have your first 2 treble crochet cluster, And now we continue working in the bracket. It tells us to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we will be working a single crochet back down here in the same stitch. So go through both those 2 loops. Then we will again chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we will be working a second 2 treble cluster still in the same stitch. So yarn over twice, go into the same stitch and bring up a loop. Yarn over, go through your first 2 loops. Yarn over, go through your second 2 loops, and here, wait with the last 2. Double yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop. Yarn over and go through the first 2 loops, yarn over and through your second 2 loops, and now with 3 loops on your hook, you yarn over and go through all 3 loops. So there you can see how we now already can see our heart shape being created. Continuing in the same repetition, it tells us to skip the next 5 stitches. Hold on to the next stitch, because now we will repeat this again. We will do a 2 treble cluster. We'll start by yarning over twice, go into the stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over and go through the first 2 loops, yarn over and go through the second 2 loops, and now save those 2 and then yarn over twice on your hook, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over and go through the first 2 loops, yarn over and go through your second 2 loops, and now with 3 loops on your hook, you yarn over and go through all those 3. Now chain 4, 3, 4, work a single crochet down in the same stitch, work chain 4, and now work another 2 treble cluster. Yarn over twice into the same stitch, pull up the loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over through the second 2, wait with those loops on your hook and make a double yarn over, go into the same stitch, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, and now with the 3 loops on our hook, you yarn over and go through all 3 loops. So with that, we have created our second heart shape, and we will now continue working like this all the way across, and I will meet you again towards the end of this row. I have now worked my last heart shape, and I will be skipping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there ends the repetition. And as you can see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches left, just like the pattern tells us. So we'll mark that stitch, and now we will work our last heart shape here by starting with the treble cluster. We'll go and work all into the next, into the same space. We'll chain 4. We'll go and work a single crochet and then chain 4 and then another treble cluster and another treble, and we'll join them now at the top, and that's our last one for this row, and it tells us to skip the next 3, and if you push that aside, you see that the first one we're skipping is that one, next one, and that's the third, and then we have 1 stitch left on our row, and we will place a double crochet. So now only wrap the yarn once around your hook, go into the last stitch, yarn over, go through the first 2, and yarn over through the second 2. So there you have what row 3 is supposed to look like once it's finished, and we will now turn and work row 4. I will start row 4 with a chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So those chain stitches, they replaces a double crochet and a chain 3 space here at the beginning of our row. After that, we start our repetition. We will work a double crochet into this single crochet that we have between the chain 4 spaces. So wrap the yarn around, go into your single crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2 loops, yarn over, and go through your second 2 loops. And then we will chain 2. We will work a half double crochet around this space between your hearts. So wrap the yarn around your hook, go all around into that space, bring up the loop, tighten a little bit, and then yarn over and go through all your 3 loops. And then end your repetition with a chain 2. So again, next repetition, we will do a double crochet in the single here in between your chain 4 spaces. And then we will chain 2. And we will make a half double crochet between the next 2 hearts. And we'll chain 2. So there you have the repetition where you will be working a double crochet between the chain 4 spaces. You'll chain 2, half double around the space between your hearts, and then chain 2. So that's what I want you to repeat all the way across, and I'll meet you again at the end of this row. I've just finished my last repetition, and I am placing a double crochet in the single here in the center of my last heart. And after that, I will chain 3, and I will place a double crochet out here at the edge, top of my chain 3s. So there we have finished our row 4, and now we turn to work our last row. So for row 5, we start with the chain 1, and now we will be working into these chain spaces. So in the first one, we will work 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4, all into the same space. And then we skip over to the next space. And then in each of our chain 2 spaces here across, we will work 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. And then skip to your next space. 1, 2, 3, and so on. So keep working 3 singles in each chain space, and I'll meet you again when we are working into our last chain space. I've reached my last space here at the end of the row, and I will put 5 single crochets here in this last space. So 2, 3, 4, and then a 5th one. And here we will change color. So let go of the previous one, grab your cream, yarn over, and pull through the last 2 loops. So that finishes off our heart stripe, and we are ready to move on. We are done with stripe 28. Let's move on to stripe 29. Now that you have warmed up with some love and hearts, I'm going to test your single crochet skills, working backwards in reverse rows. In stripe 29, we are going to work into front loops and back loops, and it's so much fun. Let me show you. Next up, we will be working these single crochet ridges. They are created by working reverse single crochet stitches. And the cool thing with that is we will be working every single row from the right side only. I will show you now how that's done. So on our last stripe, we finished with the row on the right side. I have now fastened off the spa collar, and I have put cream on my hook. We will be working single crochets now in the opposite direction to what we are used to. And we will stay here on the right side while doing so. And we will be working into these loops facing me. I will call them the front loops. and we will leave the back loops of each stitch unworked. So just work your single crochet stitches here into the front loop as we work across. So let's begin. We'll start with the chain 1. Then we're going to go into the very first stitch. So put your hook here now through the loop there. Grab the yarn and pull it through the loop and up to the front again. Yarn over and go through both 2 loops. Then we're going to work into the next stitch. So bring your hook around and into that loop. Grab the yarn and pull it through the loop and up to the front again. Yarn over and go through both 2 loops. So one more time, put the hook towards you and then into that first loop only. Grab the yarn and bring it to your front. Yarn over and go through both loops. Another one. Put the hook towards you. Go into the front loop. Grab the yarn and pull it through that loop and up to the front. Yarn over and through both 2 loops. Let's now take a look at what this is looking at like. We have all these single crochet stitches here. We have the back loops not worked into. We're saving them for later. So again, hook towards you and then find that first loop. Grab the yarn and pull it through the loop and up to the right side. Yarn over and go through both loops. So this is the way we'll keep working across in each and every single crochet. You find that one loop, grab onto the yarn, bring it with you through the loop, yarn over, and go through both 2 loops on your hook. Through the loop, grab the yarn, yarn over, and go through both 2 loops. Through the next loop, bring through the yarn, yarn over, and through both loops. So it may take some practice. You will get used to just going through that first front loop as you work your stitches across. So this is what I will keep doing all the way across for this first row, and I'll meet you again at the end of the row. I'm nearing the end of the row. I have 2 more stitches to make. So 1 more, and then here we have a last single crochet to work into at the end of the row. So I'll work into that one, and that finishes our row 1. So for row 2, we're going to continue staying here on the right side. We will start by chaining 1, and then we will make a slip stitch into the back loop of our first stitch. So go here now into the back, find that back loop from 2 rows below and just make a slip stitch there. Then we will start this row by chaining 3. And then we will work a double crochet in the back loop of each single crochet from 2 rows below across. So find those back loops and work your double crochets into each and every one of them. So you'll just have to tilt the work towards you to make sure that you see these loops here in the back of the reverse single crochet row that we just made. So keep working double crochets in each and every one of them. So we're creating this surface here that this ridge is going to rest on. So we'll keep working double crochets all the way across, and I'll meet you again at the end of the row. I'm nearing the end here now of row 2, working my last double crochets into the last loops, making sure also to work into the very last one here at the end of your row. And that finishes off row 2. And at this point, to make sure that you really did work in the first one and in the last one and in each stitch across, you can count your stitches. You're supposed to have a total of 135 double crochets across, including the chain 3 at the beginning of this row. And then we are ready to work row 3. So row 3, just as row 1, we will be working the opposite way, and we'll be starting with the chain 1. Then we're going to work reverse single crochets, working in each one of the front loops at the top of each double crochet, leaving the back loop not worked into, and then just working into the first one. So as before, we'll tilt the hook and go into that loop only, grab the yarn and pull it through up to the front, yarn over, and through the last 2 loops for a single crochet. Go into the next loop, bring the yarn through, yarn over, and through the 2 loops. Go into the front of the next stitch, bring the yarn through, yarn over, and through the 2 loops. So this is how we will keep working across. Remember, only to work in the loop facing you, so that you're leaving the back loop for our next row, working in each stitch across, and I'll meet you again at the end of this row. I'm coming towards the end here now of row 3, working another reverse single, and I'll work another one. And now all I have left here now on my row is the chain 3 at the beginning of previous row. So I will place my last reverse single at the top of that chain 3. So just work as you've done before, and that finishes your row 3. And now we're ready to work row 4. It starts with chain 1, and now it tells us to work a slip stitch in the same chain as last reverse single. So tilt it a little bit towards you, find that chain, and then just work a slip stitch into it by pulling the yarn both through the stitch and the loop on your hook. And now we will chain 3 out of this first stitch, and then we will work double crochets in the back loops here, in the back loop of each stitch across, just like we did on row 2. So yarn over, tilt the stitches over to find your first back loop, and then work your double crochet. And then work into the next one, and to the next one, and just repeat this all the way across. I'm coming to the end here now of row 4, and I'm working my last double crochets into these last loops back here. You can tell we have one more stitch to work into the very last one. So that finishes off row 4. We have now 2 ridges on this stripe, and we will make one more by working row 5, which is a total repetition of row 3. So you know how that goes. We will chain 1, and then we will work in the front loops of each stitch, working our reverse single crochets across, working into each and every one of those double crochets on our previous row. So just work your reverse single crochets across, and I'll meet you again at the end of this last row. I have a couple more stitches here before I'm done with the row, and I'm working my last here now in the last double crochet, and I'm reaching that chain 3 again. So just put the last reverse single at the top of that chain 3, pull through the last 2 loops, tighten a little bit, and with that we are finished with this stripe, and I will fasten off the yarn. So here we have our reverse single crochet ridges. The stripe is supposed to measure about 1.25 inches. So just double check. It's a little bit hard to measure since we have these little bumpy ones, but it looks like we're about on track, and we are now ready to move on. We are done working in reverse. Let's move on to our last stripe and work some spike stitches. Last but not least, we are ready to work crochet stripe number 30. We will test our stitching and counting skills throughout this stripe and learn how to make spike stitches. Don't let these fancy looking stitches scare you here at the end, because I promise it's easier than you think. Join me as we complete this last stripe together. Our last stripe is 11 rows of mainly single crochet back and forth, but on every row we will be changing into a new color. We will reach down over the last stripe and work these fun spike stitches. Let's get going on it. So we are ready to work row 1. We will be working with cappuccino, and we are on the right side of work. We will join our cappuccino here in the same chain stitch as we worked our last reversed single on our previous stripe. So find that chain space, put your hook through, and bring through the yarn. And then we will chain 1, and the pattern tells us to work a single crochet into that very same spot. So into the same spot, bring up a loop, yarn over, and go through both 2 loops on your hook. And now in the pattern it tells us to work in these back loops of each double crochet into every one all the way across with just single crochet stitches. So find your next one, find the back loop, and then work a single crochet. And then your next back loop, and you find them by tilting the work a little bit towards you, and they pop up. So it's easy to just work in each one across. So work single crochets all the way across like this, and I will meet you again at the end of this row. I'm nearing the end here of my first row, making sure to put a single also in the very last back loop here. So that finishes our row 1, and I would like to suggest to count your stitches at this point. So make sure that you have the 135 single crochet stitches across that you need for the pattern to work out for this stripe. Now let's turn it around and get ready to work row 2. And in the pattern you can see row 2, 3, and 4 will all be worked the same way. So you will chain 1, and then you will work a single crochet starting in the first stitch, and then a single crochet in each stitch across. You will turn and then work single crochet back again, and then turn and then work single crochet one more time across. So let's work rows 2 through 4 with single crochets, and I'll meet you again at the end of row 4. I am now at the end of row 4. I'm working my very last stitch, and here it's time to change color. So bring in the seafoam and put on your hook and pull through those last 2 loops. And for now, we can fasten off the cappuccino color. We are done with that one. And we now, with seafoam, can turn around to the right side of our work again, and we are now ready to work row 5. We will start by chaining 1, and then we're going to work a single crochet in the very first one and in each of the next 3. So we'll go 1 in the first one and then each of the next 3. 1, 2, and 3. Now here comes our repetition. It tells us to make a spike stitch in the next single crochet. So now go to the special stitches section and we'll read first about a spike stitch. So it tells us to skip the next single and place a marker in the next one, and marking the first single crochet to work into after a spike stitch is made. That may sound a little tricky, but I'll show you what that means. So skip that next one, and then into the next one, you'll bring a little stitch marker and just mark that stitch. You'll see later why we want to do that. So now in that one we skipped, that's the next stitch where we're going to work our spike stitches. So we will now be making 5 spikes down below this next stitch. So look at the special stitches and follow me closely. I will show you really slow. We're going to first start with the first spike. So you will yarn over, and then counting from this stitch here now, we are going to go into the single crochet, 2 single crochets to the right, and then 1 row below. So stick your hook through there, do a yarn over, and pull up that loop, and pull it like tall and loosely, so it's all the way up here in line with that stitch. And then, now we have 3 loops on our hook. We are going to work our second spike. So you will yarn over, counting from this stitch, we will go 1 single to the right, and then go 2 rows below. Go in with your hook, yarn over around your hook, and pull through, and again, pull it up to the same height where you have that stitch here. And now for your third spike, you yarn over and go 3 rows below this stitch. 1, 2, and 3. Put your hook through, and then yarn over, bring up that loop. So that was our third spike. We now have 7 loops on our hook. We're ready for our fourth one. We will be yarning over, and then we will go count 1 stitch to your left and then 2 rows below. Go into that stitch, yarn over, and pull up that loop. And now for our 5th spike. We are going into the single crochet, counting 2 single crochets to the left. That will be the stitch after the marked stitch, and then go 1 row below. So we'll yarn over, go into that stitch. Watch out for the stitch marker so it doesn't snag. We'll bring that loop up. So now we have a total of 11 loops on our hook. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 11. At this point, we are going to do another yarn over, and we're stretching up our stitches a little bit, and then pulling that loop through all our 11 loops that we have on our hook, and then we'll end it all with a chain 1. So now we can stretch this out, and we can see how our 5 spikes are now reaching across the cappuccino stripe. I will go back into the pattern on row 5, and we'll see after that we have made our spike stitch. We will be starting in that marked stitch, work single crochet in each of the next 5 single crochets. So now you will see why there is a good reason for us to have this stitch marked, because the spike stitches really wants to cover it up. So to make sure we know where we're going into next, we had that stitch marked, and we will work our first single crochet of the next 5. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that finishes off our first repetition that will be repeated across to the last 5 single crochets. So take a closer look. Our spike stitches are beautiful, both on the right side as well as on the wrong side. And I will now make another one. So again, we will be working into the next one, but before we do, grab the marker and mark the stitch that comes right after. And then we will start with our first spike, yarn over, count 2 to your right, and then 1 row down. Yarn over and bring up that loop. Yarn over, count 1 to your right, and 2 rows down. Yarn over, bring up the loop. Yarn over, count 3 rows down. Yarn over and bring up the loop. Yarn over, 1 stitch to your left, 2 rows down, and bring up the loop. Yarn over, go 2 stitches to your left and 1 row down. Yarn over and bring up that loop. We have 11 loops on our hook. We'll yarn over and wiggle our way through all these 11 loops. You can take a few at a time to make sure you get all the way through. And once you're through, you'll make a chain 1 and then stretch out that stitch where you have marked with your stitch marker. Go through the stitch either before or after you remove the marker, and then work a single crochet and then a single crochet in each of next 4, so that you work a total of 5 single crochets after your spike stitch. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there you go. You have your repetition. Keep working like this across, and I'll meet you again at the end of the row. I'm nearing the end now of row 5. I was working my repetition until there were 5 stitches left on the row. Then I made my last spike stitch. I'm now working a single crochet into the marked stitch, getting rid of the marker, and then working single crochet in the last 3 here now, so that I'm ending this row with 4 single crochet after my last spike stitch. So that finishes off this row 5, and we'll turn to our wrong side and we are ready to work row 6. This row 6 will be a row of single crochet across, but we have spike stitches and chain stitches, etc. that we need to work into. So I'll show you how that's done. We'll start with the chain 1, and then we'll work a single into the first one and in each of the next 3. So that's working into those last 4 single crochet we had on the row. So that is in the next 3. It's beginning of the row. And now when we come to this next spike, you can see here how we have a little smaller stitch before a little bigger stitch. So that's that chain stitch we made to close up the top of the spike stitch. So skip that one and then work a single crochet into the spike stitch. Just like that. Then we have a repetition started that says single in each of the next 5. So we'll work 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then same thing again. Skip that little chain stitch and work a single at the top of your spike stitch. That's the repetition we're going to keep working across. So do so, and at the end of this row, you're just going to turn and then work 2 more rows with single crochets in each stitch. So work row 7 and 8, and I'll meet you again at the end of row 8. I'm coming to the end of row 8, working my last single crochet, and now it's time to change color. So we will bring in the cream color and pull it through the last 2 loops. So now we have changed to cream. We can turn around again, and we are ready to work another row of spike stitches. We'll be working them exactly the same way, but they will be slightly offset. So they will happen here in between, in the space between the spike stitches below. So let's get started and just see how we will do that. We will chain 1, and then we will make a single crochet here in the first stitch. And then we will make a single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that took us past that first spike. We're now at the next stitch where we will put our next spike, but we will first mark the stitch after that so we know where to continue. So same thing again. Now with the cream color, we will count from this stitch 2 to the right and then 1 below. So yarn over, go into that stitch, yarn over and pull it up. Yarn over, go 1 to your right and then 2 below. Bring up the yarn to the height of your stitch, yarn over, go 3 below for our third spike, and then yarn over, go 1 to your left and 2 below, and then yarn over, 2 to the left and 1 below. Now we have all those 11 loops on our hook again. We will yarn over and we will pull it through all those 11 loops. Yarn over and pull through for a chain to close up the top here of the spike stitches. Then move these over so that you reveal that next stitch. You can get rid of your stitch marker. Make sure you get your hook into that stitch and then work your first of 5 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that finishes that repetition. So as you can see, by counting your stitches, you're going to end up placing your spikes offset from the spikes below. So keep working your next spike and repeat all the way across, and then you will turn and you will work 2 more rows of single crochet just the same way as we worked the last rows when we were working with seafoam. So work those 2 next rows of single crochets in addition to this spike row, and I will meet you then there at the end of your row 11. I'm working my very last stitches here on my very last row on my very last stripe. So here we are. We have finished the spike stitch texture stripe. We can fasten off cream. And before we're all done, I'm again gonna just double check my gauge here. It's supposed to be 2 1/4, and it looks like I'm right on spot. So with that, we have finished all 30 stripes. With stripes 28, 29, and 30, you learned how to crochet a pretty hard texture, single crochet ridges, as well as fancy looking spike stitches. And we revisited the basics with a combination of the basic stitches and other techniques. I look forward to see you again in about a month for the final installment of the Annie's Crochet Stripe Afghan Club, where we will learn how to block, weave in ends, and finally add the border to complete our Afghan. Until then, happy crocheting!